Imagine you're standing in a forest, right? It's 40,000 years ago, and it is cold. I mean, the kind of prehistoric cold that just seeps deep into your joints and refuses to leave. You're hungry, your feet ache, and somewhere behind you, a group of stocky, broad-faced beings is watching you from the tree line. They aren't wolves, they aren't bears. They are people. Well, sort of. And here's the crazy thing. They were actually there first, long before your kind showed up with your fancy tools and your campfire stories. But today, those beings are completely gone. Every single one of them. And you? Well, your species made it. We are Homo sapiens, the absolute last one standing. Welcome to This Explainer, where we're going to dive right into a prehistoric cold case to solve the ultimate evolutionary mystery.
So, how did we become the only humans? It's not a small question. Honestly, it might be the single most important question in the entire history of life on this planet. Why are we the absolute last human species left? Let's dive into this and see if we can unravel exactly what happened to the rest of our family tree.
All right, let's start with Section 1, a crowded prehistoric world.
To really wrap our heads around our current isolation, we first need to realize that for most of human prehistory, Earth was definitely not a one-species operation. Around 300,000 years ago, our planet was actually incredibly crowded. We had up to 6 or 7 distinct human species trying to survive all at the same time. Our family tree was just incredibly diverse. We had the Neanderthals thriving in the freezing climates of Europe and Western Asia. Over in East Asia, we had the Denisovans, who we actually know mostly just from fragments of DNA. And then, brilliantly illustrating how totally wild evolution can get, we have Homo floresiensis, often called the Hobbits. These were tiny humans, barely a meter tall, with brains the size of a chimpanzee's, who lived on the island of Flores and literally hunted pygmy elephants. So yeah, we were just one messy, complicated, and surprisingly large family.
And it is absolutely crucial to understand that these weren't just primitive, shuffling creatures acting on pure instinct. Not at all. They buried their dead, they controlled fire. They even crafted complex jewelry out of eagle talons. But what really humanizes them, I think, is their empathy. There's this famous archaeological discovery of a Neanderthal at Shanidar Cave in Iraq. He had a withered arm, a damaged eye socket, and severe arthritis. Yet he lived to what would have been a very old age for the time. He didn't survive alone. His community must have spent years caring for him. They were thinking, feeling people, just doing their best in a brutal world.
That brings us to Section 2, the pattern of disappearance.
Things started to shift really dramatically when modern Homo sapiens began their big push out of Africa. What follows is a geologically rapid and honestly kind of awkward pattern of local extinctions. It creates what we might call a timeline of doom. Look at the undeniable consistency here. Around 70,000 years ago, Homo sapiens push out of Africa. Then, by 50,000 years ago, Homo floresiensis vanishes. Around 40,000 years ago, the Neanderthals vanish in Europe. You see the pattern, right? Everywhere modern humans went, the local residents started disappearing shortly after. The timeline of their extinction just keeps matching the timeline of our arrival.
But we have to look at this impartially. We didn't just run around in some cinematic, continent-wide war. It was largely about a concept called competitive exclusion. Homo sapiens simply had a mundane but utterly decisive edge. We had long-range projectile weapons, like atlatls and eventually bows, which meant we could kill massive prey without getting close enough to be crushed. We also had larger, way more connected trade networks. Because of this, the existing populations just couldn't compete. They were slowly squeezed into marginal, really difficult environments, reduced to small, isolated groups, and eventually, they just faded away.
Moving on to Section 3, extinction by merger.
Now, here's a profound twist to the whole story. We didn't just aggressively compete with these other species, we actually interbred with them. Think about this number for a second. 1 to 4%. It's an astonishing scientific fact. If you are of European or Asian descent and you are listening to this right now, you carry exactly this percentage of Neanderthal DNA right there in your own cells.
So the crucial takeaway here is that fragments of these vanished people are literally inside you right now. Their extinction wasn't some clean wipeout. It was a really messy merger. We actually inherited immune system and metabolism boosts directly from Neanderthals. And people living in Tibet today, they carry a specific Denisovan gene variant that helps their bodies process oxygen at extreme high altitudes. They are carrying a genetic gift from a people who physically vanished tens of thousands of years ago. Extinction, it turns out, is not always total.
Section 4, climate and catastrophe.
Now, genetics alone don't tell the whole story.
Between 70,000 and 12,000 years ago, massive environmental pressures acted as a totally indiscriminate global killer. Around 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia erupted, and it was so massive it likely triggered a volcanic winter, severely dropping temperatures and collapsing food chains worldwide. Genetic evidence actually suggests this disaster caused a population bottleneck that dropped Homo sapiens to just a few thousand individuals globally. Just think about that. We came incredibly close to not existing, and if we barely scraped by with all of our adaptability, smaller, less flexible species were absolutely doomed.
Climate and environment also explain the mysteries of our strangest cousins. This brings us to a really fascinating scientific concept called island biogeography. This is an evolutionary process where limited resources on isolated islands cause large animals to shrink over generations, while small animals grow. It's so cool, and it perfectly explains the origins of those tiny, tool-using human hobbits on the islands of Flores, and another similar species discovered in Luzon. They were stranded, evolved in isolation, and survived right up until the environmental rules or the arrival of a new competitor changed the game entirely.
All right, Section 5, the cognitive revolution.
So, if we all face the exact same brutal climates, what was the ultimate decisive advantage that set Homo sapiens apart starting 50,000 years ago? Well, suddenly there is an undeniable explosion of complex culture in the archaeological record, which we call behavioral modernity. We start seeing elaborate cave paintings, tailored clothing specifically fitted for extreme climates, musical instruments, and hard evidence of complex future planning. We weren't just reacting to the world anymore, you know? We were modeling it, predicting it, and actively reshaping it.
And researchers believe the key to this massive explosion was recursive language. This is the ability to build sentences within sentences, to express complex hypotheticals and pass really precise, layered knowledge down through generations. This linguistic leap is what allowed us to coordinate massive groups of strangers. We could develop shared mythologies and stories that bound us together into powerful cooperative units that were way larger than any single family band.
Let's just look at the enormous gap this creates. On one hand, you have simple communication. Mammoth, that direction. Useful, sure. But on the other hand, with recursive language, you get, if we wait until the herd crosses the river at midday based on 3 years of patterns, we can cut off the young ones. The difference is just staggering. Complex, conditional planning made our language the ultimate prehistoric survival tool.
So what happens when a species armed with this cognitive superweapon expands outward? Well, as we look at the extinction drivers, we must be strictly objective. The evidence suggests it actually wasn't an organized, intentional genocide in the modern sense. Instead, it was routine, small-scale interspecies territorial violence playing out over thousands of years. Plus, modern humans migrating out of Africa likely brought novel pathogens with them, diseases that Neanderthals and Denisovans simply had zero built-in immunity against.
When you put it all together, you get what we can really call the extinction perfect storm. The disappearance of other humans wasn't one dramatic cinematic event. It was a crushing combination of every disadvantage happening all at once. Violent climate swings squeezed them. Intense resource competition from Homo sapiens starved them. Their populations became small and fragmented, and novel diseases wiped out the vulnerable.
I absolutely love this quote from the source material because it perfectly summarizes the reality. An edge that widened with every generation, like compound interest, but for survival. We weren't morally superior beings. We weren't even physically stronger. We just possessed cognitive networking that exponentially compounded our survival advantages over time. We accumulated knowledge, and with every single generation, we just got a little bit better at surviving.
Which leaves us with one final, kind of unsettling thought to ponder. Were we inevitable? The fossil record tells us clearly that we were not. We were just one lucky experiment. The one that happened to get the timing, the tools, and the networks exactly right. So the next time you feel overly confident about human civilization, remember this. The vanished Neanderthals once sat by their fires, looking out at their world, fully believing they would be here forever too. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next one.